Okay, so hello and welcome. This is AAA Queensland. I'm here with Professor Patrick Weller, AO, and you're here to talk to us about Brexit and the disruption on the UK government. So thanks for joining us.
That's a pleasure.
Okay, well, to start, how have these last few years, in particular, disrupted political conventions?
Well, British government's based on conventions. There is no written constitution, so the argument generally is we follow conventions which are regarded as binding and obligatory. So they're not written down, they have to be interpreted, but they're still regarded as binding. What's happened in the last few years, I think, is that people have ignored a whole majority of those conventions. There's a convention that if you can't control the House, the Prime Minister resigns. No longer. There's a traditional convention that the Prime Minister had the power to call an election. No longer. They now, under the Fixed Term Act, have to get a majority in Parliament, which they're not capable of doing. So the way in which British government has worked, which is to say we have a set of unwritten rules to which most people obey, what's been called the sort of good chaps nature, the principle of British politics. People know what's proper and decent and they will do it. I think it's been torn up. In these days, might is right. If you can get the numbers, you win, and if you can't, you lose. And therefore, the idea that minorities have opinions, no, they're the enemy of the people now, have gone by the board. And I think that's going to have fundamentally important on those occasions when governments cannot actually control the House. That traditional convention that the Prime Minister controls the House, Boris Johnson's lost just about every important vote he's put. So the whole environment, circumstances have now changed.
And is this a new norm? What's the legacy that comes from?
One argument was the British Constitution is whatever's happened.
Yeah.
So if it's happened, now it's constitutional. So on that basis, this is the evolution of the British Constitution. The rules that used to apply no longer apply. There are a new set of rules, and they are now become what is the new conventional rules, until such time as somebody chooses to ignore them or change them. And as long as you can get away with it, there's something in that. What has also happened, though, is that as they pass more legislation which affect the Constitution, parts of it are becoming judiciable, and the courts are becoming involved in a way they used never to come involved. So you had the 13-0 vote in the Supreme Court about Johnson's prorogation of Parliament declaring it illegal. That would not have happened, I think, in years past, and that may well be a foretaste of what's going to happen, which is going to change the nature of the Constitution.
Now, you've written about the craft of Prime Ministership. Can you make some observations on Boris Johnson's craft?
Oh, well, Boris has this notion that sounding energetic and saying something positive will solve the problem, even if it's inconsistent with what he said in the past. At the moment he's taking the sort of crash or crash through policy. We'll just go ahead and do it, and I will announce, for instance, we're going out on the 31st of October. And if we, as he said when they took no deal off the table, that was a surrender bill. They will never blink. Well, they didn't, he did. Because he had also told the Democratic Union Party in Ireland that no Conservative Prime Minister would ever put a border down the Irish Sea. He's just done it, or he's just trying to do it. So he will do it on the basis of enthusiasm, the lovable rogue notion of somebody who thinks that this is the sort of person who will lead. And after years of negotiating under Theresa May, now you've got somebody who's just going to lead from the front and tell us what we want. And I suspect it will actually work quite well. I think that sort of lovable rogue image, which I think is completely misleading, will nevertheless gain him certain support when it comes to an election. And he has one great advantage, which is the leader of the opposition. Some people are fortunate in their friends, others, like Boris, are fortunate in their enemies.
And finally, so what's your take on the current situation? Should we expect a resolution?
Oh, yes, but whether it's in 2, 3, 6 or 9 months, I just don't know. It changes every morning as someone comes up with another this time it was the Speaker. Convention, interesting. The Speaker says you can't have the same debate on the same issue 2 days running, and quotes back to an Erskine May precedent in the 1830s, 1820s. Here's convention, except he has the authority. If Boris had the numbers, he would have overruled the Speaker. If you could have just said, I disagree with the Speaker's ruling, he could have overruled it and gone on from there. But he doesn't have the numbers to do that. So the circumstances are really quite different. So we don't actually know what's going to happen or what coalition will put together. My guess will be sometime in the next 2 months the Boris deal will pass on the basis of exhaustion, and many of the opponents have been bought off. It's funny when you have a leader of the opponents, you make him a front bencher, and suddenly he becomes awfully amenable to a deal which is considerably less good than the last one which he condemned. But that's the way of politics. I think exhaustion will get over the fence eventually. People will say, we're sick of this. And this is the impression I got in England. People just don't want to talk about it. We're sick of this all. Just get something done, a deal which isn't too bad, and then we'll try and see what the consequences are. And that will be dominating the next 5 years. It's not over when they pass a deal. It's just starting.
I suppose in the meantime, we'll be here waking up in the morning and seeing what happened during the night.
Well, I look at the news at 7 o'clock in the morning to see what happened the night before.
It's always something.
There's always something at the moment. There's always something.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for the talk.
My pleasure.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
So this was AAA Queensland, and thank you to you, and goodbye.